Lyra walked through the busy spaceport with her head down. She wore the gray work suit of a maintenance worker, the lowest job a Vosi could have. Her blue skin, normally bright among her people, seemed dull today. She tried to stay invisible as she moved between the tall, important Vosi who ran the spaceport. "Watch where you're going, Barren," hissed a male Vosi as Lyra accidentally brushed against him. He stepped back as if she carried a disease. "Sorry, sir," Lyra mumbled, keeping her eyes on the floor. The word Barren stung every time she heard it. It wasn't her name, but it might as well have been. No one called her Lyra anymore. Not since the medical tests 3 seasons ago that changed everything. Lyra had once been respected. She graduated top of her class in engineering. Her family had been proud. Many male Vosi had shown interest in joining with her. Then came the standard fertility test all female Vosi took before joining ceremonies. "Barren," the medical official had said without emotion, "you cannot produce offspring." In Vosi society, nothing was more important than having children. Their population was declining. Every fertile female was precious. Every barren female was useless. Lyra reached her work area, a small closet filled with cleaning tools and repair kits. She sat on her stool and checked the day's tasks on her tablet. Clean landing bay 4. Fix the broken light panels in the east wing. Check the air filters in the visitor area. She picked up her tools and headed to the east wing first. The halls were mostly empty there. She could work without being stared at or whispered about. As she fixed the light panels, Lyra allowed herself to think about the ships that came and went from the spaceport. She imagined traveling on one, going somewhere no one knew her as Barren. But such dreams were pointless. Barren Vosi were not allowed to leave their home planet. They were given the most basic jobs and housing. They lived apart from normal society. "You should be grateful," her supervisor had told her when she was assigned to the spaceport. "Many barren females get worse jobs than this." Lyra finished the light panels and moved to the air filters. As she worked, she heard excited voices from the main hall. "They're coming today. The first human delegation to visit Vosi Prime. I heard their ship is unlike anything we've seen before." Lyra's hands stopped working. Humans. She had read about them in the news feeds. A new species that had recently joined the Galactic Alliance. They looked strange in the images she had seen. Skin in various shades of brown and pink instead of blue, no tail, and hair on their heads. An announcement echoed through the spaceport. "All department heads report to Landing Bay 1. Human diplomatic vessel arriving in 30 minutes. Lyra wasn't supposed to be anywhere near important visitors. Barren females were kept away from diplomatic events. But the air filters she needed to check were near Landing Bay 1. If she timed it right, she might catch a glimpse of the humans. For the first time in months, Lyra felt a spark of interest in something. These humans came from far away. They knew nothing of Vosi customs. They wouldn't look at her and immediately see Barren. Lyra finished her work quickly and made her way toward Landing Bay 1, careful to look busy with her toolkit. Through a large window, she saw the sleek silver ship descending. It was smaller than Vosi ships, but somehow more elegant. As the ship landed, Lyra pressed herself against the wall, trying to blend in with the shadows. The bay doors opened. The humans walked out, 5 of them, wearing blue and silver uniforms. They looked so different from Vosi, shorter, rounder, with expressions that changed quickly. One of them, a male with dark skin and short black hair, looked up and met Lyra's eyes through the window. He smiled. Lyra quickly ducked away, her heart pounding. No one had smiled at her in a very long time. 3 days after the humans arrived, Lyra found herself assigned to clean the meeting rooms after the diplomatic talks ended each day. It was work no important Vosi wanted to do, but it gave Lyra a chance to see the humans from a distance. She pushed her cleaning cart into the room after everyone had left. The long table was covered with empty cups and data tablets. As she began to collect them, she noticed one tablet still running. It showed technical drawings of some kind of engine. Interesting design, she whispered to herself, studying the drawings. The human engine was different from VOSI technology. "You understand engine designs?" a voice asked from behind her. Lyra jumped and nearly dropped the tablet. She turned to see the human male who had smiled at her on the first day. Up close, he looked even more different from VOSI. His eyes were dark brown, and his skin reminded her of the rich soil in the farming areas. "I'm sorry," Lyra said quickly, putting down the tablet. "I wasn't trying to look at your work. I'll finish cleaning and leave." The human held up his hand. "No problem at all. I'm Marcus, engineering specialist with the Earth delegation." He pointed at the tablet. "You seem to understand what you were looking at." Lyra hesitated. No one had asked for her opinion on anything technical in a long time. "I studied engineering before I worked here," she said quietly. Marcus smiled. "Fellow engineer, great to meet you. What's your name?" "Lyra," she said, surprised to hear her actual name spoken aloud. "But most people here call me." She stopped herself. "Call you what?" Marcus asked. "Nothing important," Lyra said, returning to her cleaning. "I should finish my work." Marcus sat down at the table. "I could use some help, actually. This engine calibration is giving me trouble. The atmospheric conditions on Vosa Prime are affecting our equipment." Lyra looked at the door nervously. "I'm not supposed to talk to visitors, especially not important ones." "I'm not that important," Marcus laughed. "Just a guy who fixes things. Like you." Something about his casual manner made Lyra relax a little. She looked at the tablet again. "Your calibration is off because our atmosphere has more nitrogen than yours," she explained. "If you adjust these settings here and here," she pointed without touching the tablet, "it should work better." Marcus's eyes widened. "That makes perfect sense." He made the changes she suggested. "How did you know that?" "It's basic VOSI engineering," Lyra shrugged. "We learn it early." The door opened, and a senior VOSI official entered. His eyes narrowed when he saw Lyra talking to the human. "What is this Barren doing?" he demanded. Marcus stood up. "This engineer was helping me solve a problem with our equipment." "Engineer?" The official laughed harshly. "She is a cleaning worker. Barrens are not engineers." Lyra looked down at the floor, her face hot with shame. "She just fixed a problem I've been working on for 2 days," Marcus said, his voice firm. "Whatever you call her, she knows engineering." The official's tail twitched with annoyance. "Finish your cleaning and leave," he told Lyra, ignoring Marcus's comment. After the official left, Marcus turned to Lyra. "What did he call you?" "Barren." "What does that mean?" Lyra picked up her cleaning supplies. "It means I cannot have children. In our society, that makes me less valuable." Marcus frowned. "That's why you're cleaning instead of engineering, because you can't have children." Lyra nodded. "I should go. Please don't talk to me again. It will only cause trouble for both of us." As she pushed her cart toward the door, Marcus called after her. "I need a technical assistant while I'm here. Someone who understands VOSI engineering." Lyra paused. "There are many qualified VOSI who could help you." "I want you," Marcus said. "I'll speak to your leaders tomorrow." Lyra left the room quickly, her heart beating fast. No one had wanted her help in a long time. But humans were strange. They didn't understand how things worked on Vosa Prime. Still, as she finished her shift that night, Lyra couldn't help feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Lyra couldn't believe it when she received the message on her tablet the next morning. She had been reassigned. No longer a cleaning worker, she was now technical assistant to the human engineering specialist. When she arrived at the meeting room, Marcus was waiting with a smile. Next to him stood Director Torm, the head of the spaceport, looking very unhappy. The human insisted. Director Torm said coldly, "Remember your place, Barren. Do not embarrass our people." After the director left, Marcus shook his head. "He's not very friendly, is he?" Lyra stayed standing near the door. "You shouldn't have done this. The VOSI leadership will not like it." "They agreed, didn't they?" Marcus pulled out a chair for her. "Please, sit. I have so many questions about VOSI technology." Slowly, Lyra sat down. It felt strange to sit at the table instead of cleaning it. "Why did you request me?" she asked. "There are many qualified engineers who aren't, like me." Marcus looked at her directly. "Because you saw the solution immediately, and because on Earth, we believe in choosing the best person for a job, regardless of other factors." "What is Earth like?" Lyra asked, curious despite herself. Marcus smiled and showed her pictures on his tablet. Tall buildings, green parks, people of different colors working together. "We had our own problems with treating people unfairly," he explained, "based on skin color, gender, where they were born. We're still not perfect, but we learned that judging people on things they can't control is both cruel and wasteful." "Wasteful?" Lyra asked. "Yes," Marcus nodded. "Your society is losing your skills because of something you can't control. That's wasteful." They spent the morning working on integrating human technology with VOSI systems. Lyra felt alive again, her mind working on complex problems instead of cleaning schedules. At midday, they took a break on a small balcony overlooking the spaceport. Lyra noticed other VOSI staring at them, whispering. "They think I shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "Tell me about before," Marcus asked. "Before you were labeled Barren." Lyra's tail curled around her leg, a sign of sadness in VOSI. "I was top of my class in engineering. My family was proud. I had many offers for joining ceremonies, what you might call marriage. Then came the routine health check." She looked out at the ships taking off. "The doctor said there was a problem with my reproductive system. When the news spread, everything changed. My joining offers disappeared. My family became distant. I lost my engineering position. Being barren is seen as a great failure." Marcus frowned. "That's not fair. It's not your fault." "It doesn't matter whose fault it is," Lyra explained. "What matters to VOSI is continuing our species. Our population is declining. Every fertile female is precious. And those who can't have children are thrown away," Marcus said, "even if they have other talents." "Yes," Lyra nodded. "There are many like me. We live in separate housing areas. Take the lowest jobs. Stay out of sight." Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm. Red lights flashed across the spaceport. "What's happening?" Marcus asked. Lyra checked her tablet. "The main power coupling to your ship is failing. If it goes completely, your life support systems will shut down." They rushed to the control room. Engineers were frantically trying to solve the problem. "We need to reroute the power," one engineer said. "But the human ship's connection ports are incompatible with our emergency systems." Marcus looked at the diagrams. "We need an adapter. Fast." Lyra studied the systems. "I can build one. I need parts from both systems." Director Torm glared at her. "This is too important for a Barren to handle." "She's the best engineer in this room," Marcus insisted. "Let her try." With everyone watching, Lyra felt her hands shake. But when she looked at the systems, her mind became clear. This was what she was born to do. "Give me 20 minutes, she said. 20 minutes later, Lyra held up the adapter she had built. It was a strange mix of VOSI and human parts, connected in ways no one had tried before. "This should work," she said. "We need to install it quickly." Director Torm looked doubtful. "If this fails, the human ship could be permanently damaged." "I trust her," Marcus said firmly. "Let's do it." They rushed to the docking bay where the human ship was connected to VOSI power systems. Engineers worked quickly, following Lyra's instructions to install the adapter. As the final connections were made, everyone held their breath. The power indicators flickered, then stabilized. Green lights appeared across the control panel. "It's working," Marcus grinned. "The ship's systems are back to normal." The VOSI engineers looked at Lyra with new eyes. Some nodded respectfully. Director Torm seemed surprised but gave a curt nod. "Good work," he said before walking away. In the days that followed, word spread about what Lyra had done. The human ship would have lost life support without her quick thinking. Some Vosi began to treat her differently. Not as an equal, but at least not with open disgust. Lyra and Marcus continued working together. He taught her about human technology, and she explained Vozi's systems to him. They made progress on the joint engineering project that was the main reason for the human visit. One evening, as they finished work, Marcus asked, "Are there others like you? Other Barren Vosi who have talents being wasted?" Lyra nodded. "Many. We sometimes meet at the housing complex where we are assigned to live." "I'd like to meet them," Marcus said. Lyra's eyes widened. "That's not allowed. Important visitors don't go to barren housing areas." "I'm not that important," Marcus reminded her with a smile. "Just a guy who fixes things." That night, Lyra brought Marcus to the simple building where she lived. In a small common room, 5 other Barren Vosi females sat waiting. They looked nervous when the human entered. "This is Marcus," Lyra introduced him. "He wanted to meet you." One by one, they told their stories. Tala had been a doctor before her diagnosis. Mira was a talented artist. Sela had worked in agricultural science. All had lost their positions when labeled barren. "This isn't right," Marcus said after hearing their stories. "You all have so much to offer." "It's our way," Sela said sadly. "It has always been like this." "Things can change," Marcus argued. "On Earth, we changed many unfair traditions." The next day, Marcus requested a meeting with the Vosi Leadership Council. Lyra waited outside the meeting room, worried. When Marcus finally emerged, his face was serious. "What happened?" she asked. "I told them about you and the others," he said. "I suggested they were wasting valuable skills. I mentioned that humans might share medical technology that could help with their population decline." Lyra's tail stiffened in alarm. "You shouldn't have done that. The council will be angry." That afternoon, Lyra was called to Director Torm's office. He looked at her coldly. "Your human friend has caused trouble," he said. "He suggests we change traditions that have kept our society stable for generations." Marcus meant well, Lyra said quietly. "The human delegation will leave in 10 days, Director Torm continued. "Until then, you may continue your work with him. But you have been gathering barren females, encouraging discontent. This must stop." "We were just talking," Lyra protested. "Your access to other areas of the spaceport is now restricted," Director Torm said. "You will work only with the human, then return to your housing area. If you break these rules, you will be detained for disrupting social harmony." As Lyra left the office, she felt fear rising inside her. She had briefly tasted respect again, but now everything was threatened. When she told Marcus what happened, his face darkened with anger. "This isn't over," he promised. "Not by a long shot." 3 days before the human delegation was scheduled to leave, Lyra didn't show up for work. Marcus waited for an hour, then went looking for her. None of the Vosi would tell him where she was. Finally, a young cleaning worker whispered to him, "They took her last night," for questioning. Marcus immediately went to the human delegation leader, Ambassador Elena. "They've detained Lyra. We need to help her." "The Vosi say she was organizing protests," Elena said carefully. "They consider it an internal matter." "She wasn't organizing protests," Marcus insisted. "She was just talking to other women like her, sharing ideas. That's not a crime." "It might be here," Elena reminded him. "We're guests on their world." "Then maybe we should leave," Marcus said firmly. "Cancel the technology exchange unless they release her." Ambassador Elena studied Marcus's face. "You care about this woman." "I care about what's right," Marcus replied. "And what they're doing isn't right." After a long moment, Elena nodded. "I'll request an emergency meeting with the High Council." 2 hours later, the human delegation sat across from the Vosi High Council in their grand meeting chamber. The room was silent as Ambassador Elena spoke. "We understand you have detained a Vosi female named Lyra, who has been working with our engineering team," she said. "We request her immediate release." The head counselor, a tall, stern Vosi, replied, "This is an internal matter." The Barren female was encouraging dissent among others of her kind. "She was my assistant," Marcus spoke up. "She helped save our ship when the power coupling failed. Her technical skills are not in question," the counselor said. "Her obedience to our social order is the issue." Ambassador Elena leaned forward. "Perhaps we should discuss the medical technologies we were planning to share. Technologies that might help with your population decline." The council members looked at each other. "What do you mean?" one asked. Elena nodded to the human medical officer, Dr. Patel, who stood up. "We have reviewed the medical information you shared with us. Your population decline isn't just because of barren females. It's a broader issue affecting both males and females." He displayed some charts on the large screen. "We have technologies that could potentially help with reproductive health across your population. Treatments that have helped humans overcome similar challenges." The council room buzzed with whispers. "But," Ambassador Elena added, "we only share our medical advances with societies that value all their members, not just those who can reproduce." The head counselor's tail twitched with irritation. "You would withhold medical help unless we change our traditions." "We're suggesting," Elena said carefully, "that your traditions might need to evolve if your species is to thrive, and we're offering help with that evolution." After hours of tense discussion, the council agreed to release Lyra. Marcus was waiting when she walked out of the detention center. Her blue skin looked pale, and she moved slowly. "Are you okay?" he asked, concerned. "Yes," she nodded. "They just kept me in a room. Asked many questions about what we were doing." Marcus led her to a quiet garden area in the diplomatic section of the spaceport. "I need to tell you something important," he said. "Our medical team has been studying Vosi biology." Lyra looked at him, confused. "Dr. Patel believes your condition might be treatable with human medical techniques," Marcus said gently. "You might not be barren after all." Lyra's eyes widened. "I could have children. Be normal again." "Yes," Marcus nodded. "But there's more happening now. The council is considering changes to how they treat barren females in exchange for our medical help." Lyra sat silently for a long moment. "If I can be treated, I would be accepted back into society. I could work as an engineer again." "Yes," Marcus said. "But I think you could do that anyway. You've proven your worth." Lyra looked at him with new understanding in her eyes. "You humans see things differently." "We try to," Marcus smiled. "You have a choice to make now." The news spread quickly through the Barren housing complex. Human doctors could potentially cure many Vosi who had been labeled barren. The Vosi High Council was considering changes to how they treated these women in exchange for human medical technology. Lyra sat in the small common room with Tala, Mira, Sela, and others who had become her friends. They looked at her with mixed emotions. "You could be normal again," Tala said quietly. "Return to engineering work officially. Maybe even have a joining ceremony." Lyra nodded. "The human doctors want to examine me tomorrow." "Will you do it?" Mira asked. "Take their treatment." Lyra's tail curled around her leg, showing her uncertainty. "I don't know. Everything is happening so fast." Later that evening, Lyra walked with Marcus through the public gardens near the spaceport. The sun was setting, turning the sky a deep purple. They had grown comfortable with each other over the past weeks. "The council sent me a message," Lyra said. "If I accept the human treatment and it works, they will restore my engineering status. They'll use me as an example of cooperation between our species." "That sounds positive," Marcus said. "Isn't that what you want?" Lyra stopped walking. "When I was first labeled barren, all I wanted was to go back to my old life. But now," she looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "Now I see things differently." "Because of what happened?" Marcus asked. "Because of you," Lyra said simply. You saw value in me when my own people didn't. You showed me that worth isn't tied to having children. She continued walking. If I accept the treatment, I help myself. But what about the others? What about those who can't be treated? Will they still be thrown away? Marcus was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? I want to speak to the High Council before I decide, Lyra said with new determination in her voice. The next morning, Lyra stood before the High Council. Marcus and Ambassador Elena were there to support her. The council members looked uncomfortable having a barren female address them directly. You were given permission to receive human medical treatment, the head counselor said. Why do you delay? Lyra stood tall, her voice steady. I will consider the treatment. But first, I want to know what will happen to others like me. Those who cannot be treated or choose not to be. That is not your concern, the counselor frowned. It is my concern, Lyra insisted. I have lived as Barren. I know what it means to be seen as worthless. I know the talents being wasted. The room was silent. No one had ever heard a barren female speak this way to the High Council. The humans offer medicine that could help our population grow, Lyra continued. But they also offer something more important. A new way of seeing value in all Vosi. You dare to lecture the council? Another counselor asked angrily. Ambassador Elena stepped forward. The medical technologies we offer would help many Vosi have children. But they won't help everyone. What happens to those who remain unable to reproduce? The head counselor looked troubled. Our traditions have served us for generations. Traditions can change, Marcus said. On Earth, we once judged people by things they couldn't control. We learned better. We grew stronger by valuing different kinds of contributions. Lyra took a deep breath. I will make you an offer. I will accept the human treatment if you agree to create a place for barren Vosi to use their skills. A research center where we can contribute to society. The council members looked at each other in surprise. Why would you demand this? The head counselor asked. You could be normal again. Lyra looked at Marcus, then back to the council. Because I learned that being normal isn't what makes someone valuable. As she left the council chamber, Marcus walked beside her. That was brave, he said. I'm scared, Lyra admitted. They might refuse everything now. Marcus took her hand. Whatever they decide, you're not alone anymore. 3 months after the human delegation was scheduled to leave, they were still on Vosi Prime. The original diplomatic visit had turned into something much bigger. The beginning of a lasting partnership between humans and Vosi. Lyra stood in the large, bright room that would soon be the main laboratory of the new Vosi Research Center. Workers were installing equipment and placing furniture. Through the wide windows, she could see the spaceport where she had once been just a cleaning worker. Everything is almost ready, said Tala, who would lead the medical research division. We open next week. Lyra nodded, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. After 2 weeks of discussions, the High Council had finally agreed to her proposal. They would create a research center staffed by females previously labeled as barren. In exchange, humans would share medical technology to help with Vosi reproduction issues. Director Lyra called a young Vosi male, carrying a box of equipment. Where should I put these sensor arrays? In the engineering lab, please, Lyra replied. It still felt strange to be called director instead of Barren. As the young worker nodded respectfully and hurried away, Lyra remembered the day the council announced their decision. They had tried to make it seem like their own idea, of course, a progressive step forward for Vosi society. But everyone knew the truth. It was Lyra's stand, supported by the humans, that had forced the change. Lyra had received the human treatment for her condition. Dr. Patel had confirmed she could now have children if she chose to. But that was no longer what defined her worth, to herself or to others. Impressive view, said a familiar voice behind her. Lyra turned to see Marcus standing in the doorway, smiling. He had extended his stay on Vosi Prime as the leader of the human technology team. It's really happening, Lyra said, still amazed. 57 formerly barren females will work here, using their skills for the first time in years. Marcus walked to the window beside her. And how many have signed up for the medical treatment? 32 so far, Lyra said. Some want to have children now that they have careers again. Others, like Mira, don't want the treatment. They say being barren is part of who they are now. And both choices are respected. Marcus nodded. That's progress. They stood in comfortable silence, watching ships land and take off from the spaceport. Their worlds were becoming more connected every day. I received an offer from Ambassador Elena, Marcus said. She wants me to stay here for a full year as the permanent human liaison to the research center. Lyra's tail swished with happiness before she could control it. Will you accept? I'd like to, Marcus said. I feel like we've only just begun our work here. There's so much more we can learn from each other. The council has asked me to teach a class at the engineering academy, Lyra told him. The first barren female to teach there. Some parents are upset, but many students have already registered. Changing minds one at a time, Marcus smiled. That evening, Lyra invited Marcus to dinner at her new apartment. She had moved out of the barren housing complex last week. As they ate, they talked about future projects, new ideas, and the changes happening in Vosa's society. Some of the older council members still resist, Lyra said. They say we're moving too fast, breaking too many traditions. Change is never easy, Marcus replied. But it's happening, and you started it. Lyra shook her head. No, you started it. When you looked at me and saw an engineer instead of a barren female. I just saw you, Marcus said simply. That's all humans really did. We saw the real Vosi, not just the labels your society gave you. As the stars came out over Vosa Prime, two people from different worlds sat together, comfortable in each other's company. Beyond their window, a society was slowly changing, learning that value comes in many forms. And it had all begun because a human had chosen a woman that others had thrown away.